Hi, and we're live here with Adam from OverDrive. So thanks everyone for watching. Sorry we were a little 30 seconds late. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Anytime I get to talk to someone from our sister company, it is
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always like taking advantage of working with OverDrive and chatting to OverDrive about stuff. So for those who aren't aware, we share the same parent company, which is Rakuten. So kind of combined, we're essentially the digital reading arm of Rakuten.
Yeah, we're like we literally are. You guys are kind of like the consumer side, and we're the library side, and then we don't fit into any perfect part of Rakuten because Rakuten does so many different things. But we're like the ebook arm of this multi-armed.
It's nice. We're just in the corner reading all the books while Rakuten slowly takes over the world.
Yeah, well, they do all the fun, Ebates and all the purchasing and all
all the sports branding.
Yeah, we're just in the corner reading books, talking to each other, minding our business.
Just like nerds there.
Exactly.
So for anyone that's unfamiliar with OverDrive, can you give us a little overview of what it is and what you do there?
Sure, absolutely. So OverDrive is, or Rakuten OverDrive, I suppose I should say, our full, so we don't get in trouble. OverDrive is an ebook and audiobook company similar to Kobo, except we work with libraries and schools all around the world. So about 44,000 libraries and schools in over 60 countries use our service to provide ebooks and audiobooks through phones, devices, anywhere that you might normally read. You can access all that stuff digitally 24/7. As long as you have a library card or a student ID, you can do it no matter where you are in the world. So if you're from Toronto and you have a Toronto Public Library card, but you're visiting me in Cleveland, you could borrow stuff from your Toronto Public Library right there. So,
I didn't know that. So I can just borrow from Toronto Public Library anywhere I am?
Yep, 24/7, no matter what. So I am a bit of an insomniac, so I'll borrow stuff, in the middle of the night, so even if the library is closed. And then the books return themselves automatically because it's all digital, which is great. Just like a physical library, all of the digital libraries are going to have different collections. So your library, first off, in Toronto, they have a massive collection, and same thing here in Cleveland, but it's going to depend on who their service population is and things like that. So the majority of libraries do have, thousands, if not tens of thousands of books available through our service at this point. But yeah, it's a really simple, great service. Like I said, it's completely free, which is nice. And then my job here, one of my jobs, I suppose my main job, is basically consumer marketing. So my job is to go out in the world and find all of the readers who might be interested in using our service. So I go to book festivals and I purchase a lot of our advertising, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or doing social influencers, finding YouTubers who are on BookTube and paying them money to talk about our service and all that.
Oh, yeah. We're a big fan of BookTubers here. I'm always getting kind of the latest YouTube stuff from the team. They're like, do you watch this? I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it can be almost overwhelming. At any given time, you might walk by my desk and see me just watching YouTube, and people probably assume I'm not working, but I promise I am.
You're like, this is my job.
This is part of what I do. And then the thing that most people know me for now is I co-host our podcast, The Professional Book Nerds, with my co-host, Jill, who is on deadline right now for a very important thing for our CEO, so she's not right next to me. But we do 2 episodes a week, which we were just joking about before we hopped on.
I know. I was just asking Adam, how they manage 2 episodes a week is such a lot for a podcast.
I'm just always tired. But we do author interviews on Mondays, and then every Thursday, Jill and I do kind of like a themed episode where we'll either do the biggest books coming out in the coming month, or we'll do stuff around whatever holiday, or we're really big fans of Stephen King. So we've done multiple Stephen King type things. I did one talking about His Dark Materials because the show just came out. So we like to be a little bit on trend there. But yeah, Mondays and Thursdays. And I don't know about you guys, but we do all of our own editing and all of the marketing for it. And so it is, when I tell people, when we do live events and they're like, wow, you have the best job in the world, this podcast. And I'm like, well, this isn't my actual job. It just consumes every waking moment of my life. But it's great. I get to read amazing books and then ask all the nerdy questions.
Yeah, speaking of Stephen King and like live events, you should come to Toronto, or we should have got you to come for around Halloween. But they filmed a lot of the new It in Casa Loma here in Toronto, so you could have done like a live podcast from the area.
Oh man, okay. Well, let's figure out a time for me to do that. Even though they're not filming anymore, I would still love to see that stuff. I went to the one of the Halloween Horror Nights a while ago, and they had like the house that was like set in Derry, like the actual Pennywise like house that they
Oh
have.
God.
They had like a horror version of that, and
Oh,
it was very
I'm
creepy, but it was amazing.
far too much of a wimp to be able to do that, but I would listen to that podcast from there. So yeah, I forgot to mention, if anyone has any questions throughout, you can feel free to like add them to the comments, and we can be asking Adam while we have him here, and then we can take questions at the end too.
Sure.
So I guess, yeah, how did you get started working at OverDrive, or like what brought you to the life of books?
Sure. So I have always been a big reader. My mom was a teacher for about 4 years. I went to school for English and communications. As will become evident while we talk, I like to speak a lot. So that was, a very easy transition for me. But basically, I went to college, and then I went to graduate school for sports management, which I'm clearly not using.
It links in with all the Rakuten sponsorships of like the Golden State, you know?
Yeah, anytime they need me to go over to Barcelona and watch some soccer matches, I'm here for it. But no, when I came back from graduate school, I was working at my dad owned a State Farm insurance agency for several decades, and I was selling insurance and financial products for him, and that was not what I wanted to do. But I honestly just started applying all over the place, and I saw that this company called OverDrive was in my area, and it looked amazing what they were doing. When I was in college, I always would tell people at interviews that I wanted to do a job that at the end of the day was doing something good for the world. And then like the recruiters that I would talk to would look at this, 21-year-old kid and be like, all right, fine, whatever. And they'd roll their eyes at me. And as it just so happened, there's this company right in Cleveland that are the entire reason for this company is to help people read more easily. So I started helping like libraries and schools create marketing plans for our service, which I know we'll kind of get into a little bit. And then sort of just bounced around a little bit in the marketing world as people would move on from the company or to different positions. I would sort of just kind of gobble up what they were doing. So first it was our blog, and then it was our social media, and then it was a lot of our bookish events. And all of a sudden that just kind of became like my sort of wheelhouse, I suppose. And here I am.
So you're wearing all of the OverDrive hats at once.
I'm guessing you guys do this too, but just about everyone here wears a bunch of hats. Yeah, we're a big company that very much functions like a family company where everyone helps out where they can.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm glad that we've got you on Facebook to chat to us about it then, because you can answer like every single question.
I sure hope so. I'm gonna do my best.
Cool. So Kobo Writing Life distributes ebooks to OverDrive, and we're really excited that we're going to be distributing audiobooks very soon because we just launched our audio upload platform. So self-published authors can upload their audiobook files and publish them really, really easily, just as easy as their ebooks. So I guess why should independent authors be taking advantage of the library market?
So one of the things that is really important to remember is the library market is huge for discoverability. Think about all the times you've gone to a library, whether it's digital or physical, and you've borrowed something that you never would have heard of. People tend to go to a bookstore, whether it's an independent bookstore or kind of a big box one, or even Amazon. And they look for a specific book. You don't really go and you don't really browse. Sometimes we might do it at a physical bookstore, but that's more often than not what you're doing at a library. You're going and you're browsing and you're seeing what's available, and you're willing to take a chance on something because it's not costing you as a reader any money. And then what I will end up doing, when we were joking earlier before we started recording, we have all these books all around our office that I get for free because it's a perk of the job. And yet I'm still going to places every week and buying books. And the reason is I fall in love with these authors and these books through the library. And then I want to go and I want to purchase those titles wherever I can find them and either have them for our own bookshelf, or more often than not, they become gifts for people around because I have a finite amount of space. But that's all to say that The library is a great way for you as an author to get discovered, and digitally, especially through our service, it's great because you don't have to worry about, I know a lot of independent authors have to deal with, from a physical standpoint, how are they going to print the amount of books that they want to sell, and are they going to print too many? And there's just a lot to juggle, whereas everything digitally, especially, with Kobo Writing Life and OverDrive, you don't have to worry about any of that, and you can quickly get the word out to libraries and schools about your service or about your books. And they can really help you create a new audience that you might not be able to reach depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah, I think librarians are really great for word of mouth. Like, we find when we do a lot of consumer research that people still buy books because people have told them about it or they've heard things about it. So for an independent author, like, a librarian really is like a very good bookseller for you,
Oh yeah, there's a reason why, if you are fortunate enough ever to go to a library conference, which I may sound dorky, but I promise you they're a lot of fun. We go to a ton of these every year, like the American Library Association, and what you'll see is publishers are bringing books that don't come out until like 6 months in advance to give copies to librarians. And the reason is exactly what you said. Librarians are very much champions of books and champions of reading. And if the publisher can get a librarian at a big library, say Toronto or Cuyahoga County, where I'm at in Cleveland, if they can get a librarian there to kind of shout from the rooftops about how great a book is, they know that a lot of people are going to be not only borrowing it from the library, but they're also going to want to go purchase their own copies. So yeah, if you can get your books into the library, that's basically a glowing recommendation from an expert on books that your book is worth having.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really easy for Kobo Writing Life authors to opt their books into OverDrive. It's like a simple toggle button, and you enter your kind of specialized library price, and then it gets sent through to you guys' system. And I can only assume you're doing lots of magic in the back end to make that available.
Yeah, so the magic in the back end is one thing that I don't know the specifics about, but I can tell you one of the nice things is for libraries who go in and they purchase books from us, and that's important to tell the Kobo Writing Life people as well. You can, like, as you mentioned, you can set a price for your book, and then I know that they're digital copies, but they work just like physical books in the sense that a library might go in and purchase 20 copies of your book, and then 20 people can borrow it at the same time, and then there'll be a waiting list at the end. So then when the book becomes available to you, then it gets borrowed for you. So you can set your own prices, and the more copies that a library purchases, the more that are going to be available to the end users. But what we do, and we have basically a marketplace that looks, again, similar to Amazon or to like Kobo if you're looking at specific books on your guys' marketplace. Basically, libraries go in and they can search for specific books, or they can look at our collections. And we have an entire indie author kind of section of this, so that it breaks down, the books that are available, the bestsellers, and then we do lots of cataloging so that people can see what might be on sale or what's new. And so, yeah, when you put your content into our service, it doesn't just get thrown into an ocean of books. It gets, thrown into that ocean of books, but then it also gets highlighted so that people have a chance to discover.
It's like in the ocean, but like floating at the top.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're sitting on one of like those dinghies. It's kind of like bobbling around so people can see you from afar.
Yeah. And what are you seeing in terms of genre that's really popular with libraries? Like, have you seen trends this year that are kind of new or anything like that?
Yeah, so there are always ebbs and flows, but I mean, what we've really seen is romance and historical fiction are always really, really popular with us.
Yeah.
People of all ages and backgrounds use our service, but more like the biggest kind of pool of people are tend to be slightly older females. And what we've seen is, for as long as I've been here, which is 9 years, romance has
9 years.
Yeah, it was just this past week. 9 years I've been here.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, romance is really, really popular. But honestly, nonfiction as a general category is always really big. Memoirs and biographies. Young adult fiction continues to be more and more popular, especially as it kind of gets more segmented out into specific areas. People used to, young adult fiction didn't exist for not too long ago, and now there's young adult fantasy, and there's LGBTQ YA and everything in between, and there's found voices, but romance tends to be our most popular. Okay. But really, we've seen mystery, thriller, suspense. Really, there is, if you write a good story, there is absolutely a market for it in the library.
Yeah, cool. And with the categories that you have, is there any kind of best practice for metadata advice that you have when sending books to a library? I'm sure that you receive the categories in the same way that we send them, but is there anything that authors should be aware of?
Yeah, so a lot of libraries are starting to use BISAC codes, and for those who might not be familiar with BISAC, it's basically a better way to break down what your book, what genre it would fit in. So in the past, you might walk into a library or even a bookstore, and it might just say like thrillers. That is a really, really big category, or like mysteries. Mysteries is a massive category, and so what BISAC does is it breaks it down. So it might be something like mysteries, cozy, I'm using my hands, I don't know if anyone can see it, mysteries, and then like cozy mysteries, and then like cozy mysteries that are set in the 1900s, and then cozy mysteries that are set in the 1900s that are all about, you know, cats. Like you can literally break it down that far. And so what libraries are doing now, instead of using the Dewey Decimal System, because the guy who created the Dewey Decimal System was a pretty terrible person, happily get into that later, but away from that, and they're using this BISAC code, which gives people a lot easier time finding books. So if you go into a library now, you might literally see like a specific, not just like a travel area, you might see a travel area that is specific to, say, you want to go to the south of France. They'll have like a smaller section within that travel area so you can find those books. So we use those BISAC codes as well. So if you're writing a book and you want to put BISAC codes in it, just to kind of break it down, if you go to, I think it's bisac.org, but if you just look up BISAC, you can sort of figure out how you would want to categorize your book. And then when you put those categorizations in Kobo Writing Life, those will get passed on to us. And that way, when people look for a specific BISAC code while they're doing their searches in our marketplace, they'll discover your book, even if they weren't looking for it directly.
Awesome. I see that Leslie Donaldson has kindly shared the link to bisg.org. Thank you in the comments.
Did I get that right? Did I have the right link?
I mean, bisg.org/page/BISAC edition. Okay. So you were basically there.
I was close. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that.
And for Kobo Writing Life, they don't enter BISAC specifically, but we have the categories written out, and in our backend, they like coincide with other BISACs and stuff. So we are using the same system, but it maybe isn't as plainly obvious, but it's good to know that we're all in sync with those. And I find BISAC so interesting because they update them once a year, and like, I just really like the idea of people sitting around a room and just like creating new genres of books. They're just like, this is really popular this year.
Yeah, it's honestly, I keep waiting for, as you're mentioning, you know, there are always trends in the book world, but one of the things that I enjoy is trends in book covers. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but like one of the things that's really big this year is if it's kind of like a suspenseful book, you just put a snake on it. Like there's snake covers. I love Leigh Bardugo. Her newest book, Ninth House, has a snake on it. The Holly Black's book that just came out, Queen of Nothing.
She's coming to Kobo next week.
I got to interview her for our podcast, and I got to read Queen of Nothing like 5 months before anyone else. This is apropos of nothing. We were talking about getting advanced reader copies of books, but they sent me one of 100 advanced reader copies of Queen of Nothing, and it was like marked that I couldn't tell anyone, and it like had a number on it, and it was like, seriously, if you sell this, we'll know exactly who did it.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. But there's all of these different things that like it's trends in book covers too, and you'll start to see it if you're watching this. You'll start to notice like there's books that have the same type of font, or like it like for a while everything was girl on a something, or
always something to do with a girl.
Yeah, which is still happening. But the nice thing about BISAC is that when we go into our marketplace, we've had a lot of fun in our office, kind of curating collections for libraries that they can use based on popular BISACs, and then the libraries will end up categorizing those in their collection for people as well. So yeah, the more information and description you can have with your book, the better.
Awesome. We have a question there. Sky McKinnon has asked, will we be able to enter BISAC codes in KWL at some point? Potentially. We might still frame it like the category dropdowns as they are, but we update those BISAC codes every year. So they'll definitely be a more searchable and easier option to enter them. And as we're speaking just about covers there, we always kind of get questions about what's the best cover for different genres. So just like you said there, Adam, I think it's really good for authors to kind of like if you don't know what to do this year?
Yeah, definitely just it cut off for half a second. I panicked.
Oh.
But that's okay. I will say there's two ways you can do covers. One is to look at books that are similar to yours that are really popular, and you can, of course, always use that as like a template for yourself. Or if you happen to have some skill in kind of art, and I don't personally, but I will say, speaking of independent authors, kind of like the shining star that I always think is our buddy Penny Reed. She writes romance novels. And she's done like the Winston Brothers is like her big knitting in the city. She writes these like kind of cozy romances that are really funny. And she makes her own covers, and she's done them in a way that instead of fitting in with other romances, she specifically did hers where they stick out very clearly, and she kind of created her own brand for herself. So all of her covers look like they're crocheted. And then like the Winston Brothers is a series of books all about several brothers, and she like does the cover so it looks like it's a crocheted version of one of their faces. And so when you see it, you automatically know it's a Penny Reed book. So if you can do it one of two ways. You can have it stand out where it's sort of your own brand, or again, if you want it to be instantly recognizable as like, this is a cozy romance, or this is a Agatha Christie style suspense mystery. You can see what's popular now, and both ways will work. Honestly, they'll get noticed both ways.
Yeah, what I really like about Penny Reed's books too is that she has authors that write in her universe, and even though they're other authors, you know that those are like Penny Reed books.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're very, very well defined. And actually, she'll be coming back on our podcast in like 2 weeks, just because we have to make sure we talk to her at least once a year, just because she's a delightful person.
I know. I just met her last week in Houston at a conference, so it was my first time meeting her. So I just like grabbed her and was like, "Hello." Yeah. So do you have any other marketing tips that authors can use specifically for the library market?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, one of the things, it's kind of tiresome, but I will say libraries listen to people when they send emails and they send recommendations for new collections and new content. So two things. One, you can absolutely email them directly and say, hey, here's who I am. Here's the book that I've written, maybe put in like, here's something that makes it stand apart, whether it's an award you've won, or why your book is interesting when others maybe kind of just like everything else. And you can email them directly, or if you have a little bit of a following on social media, maybe you have a newsletter, which I know a lot of independent authors do. Just send out a request to your readers and say, hey, I'm trying to get a little bit more discovered. Would you mind contacting your library? Through OverDrive's systems, as a reader, you can go in and recommend books that are already in our system. So if you have writers whose books are through Kobo Writing Life that are in the OverDrive system, even if a library doesn't own it, if you go to search for that book at your library's OverDrive website, you can recommend that they add it. So there are lots of people who I know have gone in and recommended books that, and then a lot of the libraries will either purchase content, whether it's after one recommendation, or they basically have an automated system in the background that we can help them set up, where some libraries wait for 3 recommendations or 5, or there's some libraries like I think Seattle Public or King County, one of the two, or maybe Snow Isle, one of the Pac Northwest libraries. Anytime a book gets recommended, they purchase it right away. It's basically like on demand purchasing. Yeah, I have no idea what their budget is. It must be insane. But anytime someone goes into that library's OverDrive site and they recommend a book, they purchase it for that. And then if you're the person who's recommended it, it gets borrowed right away for you, kind of front and center. So
yeah, that's interesting to know, because I know that authors before have, with print books, it's much harder to like go to a library with a stack of books being like, I wrote these, can you carry them, please?
Right.
But with an ebook, I didn't realize that it was so easy for an author to kind of reach out to their library and like ask them to do so.
Yeah, and like I said, the amazing thing about libraries is they actually do. They love having their community sort of tell them what books they're interested in reading. Something else I would say, and this isn't a direct library thing, and I'm sure it's something you guys have brought up, but like if you are a writer, joining online communities of people similar to yours and seeing how they've had success is a great way of doing it. Young adult Twitter can be overwhelming at times, but it's also a great place to discover new voices who are similar to yours. And honestly, any genre, any subgenre of a book, you're going to be able to find a Facebook group or a Twitter group, or just a hashtag, and you can see what other people are doing and kind of form friendships. And then you can ask them how they're how they're connecting with people. Penny Reed, especially, she has a Facebook group that's like massively, it's huge. I think I'm one of like 10 guys in it. It's pretty brilliant. But I'll see in there, like, people will send a lot of fun stuff back and forth, but then people will ask, like, hey, I'm an aspiring writer. How did you guys get started doing X, Y, and Z? And so finding a bunch of people who are doing the same thing you're doing and sharing ideas on how you've had success. The nice thing about authors and books in general is, like, just because, if you and I both wrote a similar book, just because someone read one of ours, it doesn't mean they're not going to want to read the other one. In fact, they're probably going to want to read both of them. So, the more connections you can get, even in your own, kind of subgenre, the better.
Yeah, and I think libraries themselves can be really great meeting spaces for authors. I know that we've done events with Toronto Public Library. We did one for Indie Author Day, where we just kind of like had a workshop and we talked to a few local authors about things, and it was really great. There was like lots of people there, and it's just like another space that you can kind of use to take advantage of. I mean, I feel like taking advantage is the wrong phrase, but kind of like, getting to know your like local library is always good. So I'm sure that there's different writing groups and meetups that happen like throughout libraries.
Absolutely. We are, obviously, our service is the digital library space, but, we tell people, we're not trying to tell people to stop going to libraries. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We found the more often people use a service like OverDrive and our app Libby, the more likely they are to go to the physical library, because what they tend to see is they discover the library through us, maybe for the first time in a decade or 2 decades or however long it's been. And they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I wonder what else the library has. And you're absolutely right. Libraries have maker spaces where you can go and, we're talking about covers, they can help you do your own cover. They can help, help you with ideas. They do have writing workshops. They have, resume building. If you're looking to get into a job, like, there's literally no end to the amount of things you can do at a library. You can learn a new language. You can do research for your books. Like, the amount of authors, like massively successful authors that we've spoken to, that even though they have the world at their fingertips and they're probably worth endless amounts of money, every single one of them is like, well, yeah, I went to the library and I found some books about, whatever it is I was looking at. Like, just that small tip. And then the more often the librarians see you, they're more likely to be involved.
And who doesn't love just going to a library and walking around? Like, it's such a nice experience. And I really enjoy when libraries curate like local authors and things, and you can find books that you wouldn't normally see.
Absolutely. Working at this company, we're fortunate to go to a lot of libraries, and every time I get to walk into a new library, it's like, I still have that feeling, is like, wait, these are free? I get to just, I can just read these anytime. Like, it's the same thing with our app. I was joking with we had a company meeting yesterday, and I did give a small kind of talk on something, and I was like, I'm still blown away that you can just use our app and you can borrow a book and it's just right there on my phone anytime. Like, that's the same thing about libraries. They're just, you never know what you're going to discover when you just walk into a library.
Yeah, and it's the same with the Kobo devices now. All of our newer devices have OverDrive integration built in, so it's just a tap of a button, enter your library number, and then you're away with reading books, and it's just so easy.
Yeah, I love how easy our service is with every device, but with the Kobo ones, it's amazing that it's like literally, it's completely integrated. It's it's almost like we're like we all get to collaborate on stuff.
I know, it's like we have the same parent company.
Crazy, right? Yeah.
Well, you're talking about the app. So OverDrive has several apps. So could you talk maybe about the difference between the OverDrive app and Libby and is it Sora?
Sora, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Sora. And also, it only occurred to me recently. I remember, I think we went to Digipalooza for OverDrive.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is it called Libby? And then the second I said it, I was like, oh, it's librarian.
Yeah. So, okay, I can give you the whole background on all of them.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. So the OverDrive app was our first app. And that was the one where you would, borrow ebooks and audiobooks. And what we did was, a couple years ago, we knew that we wanted to take all of the awesome feedback we've gotten from people over the years of how we could make the app easier and what they would like to see in it. We took all that feedback, and our developers basically said, well, we could either completely tear our app down and then build it from scratch, or build it back up, or we could just start it from scratch and it would be a lot faster. And so we built it from the ground up, and we did a bunch of market research on different names. And Libby does sound like library, and I think that's why it ended up testing the best, but it wasn't our intention to do like why. Yeah, so there's a couple different names, and that was one that just people tend to like the best. And so as we were building out the Libby app, there's a few small things that the OverDrive app does that isn't currently in Libby, and we don't want to take away that until Libby has 100% of the capabilities as the OverDrive app does. So what I tell people is if you're already using the OverDrive app and you're happy, like that's fine. You're using our service, so that's great. But Libby is just a lot more streamlined. It's a lot faster. It takes up a lot less room on your phone with the different files. You don't have to worry about downloading anything because it all uses our browser-based reading and our browser-based listening for the audiobooks. You can still read offline and things. It'll basically kind of like cache the whole book in your browser, which is really cool. It's just a lot easier to find books. The way that everything is searchable is a lot easier in Libby. It's just a better experience. So if you're brand new to our service, we tell people try Libby because it'll get you up and running a lot faster. But if you're using the OverDrive app, we're not going to like pull the rug out from underneath you. And then Sora is our student app. So if people are library users or are familiar with the library world, you may likely know that libraries are very big on privacy, and that's awesome. We don't want to know who you are if you're using our app, Libby. If you want to give us your email address because you want book recommendations from us and stuff like that, awesome. But if you want us to leave you alone, we're never going to ask who you are. We don't want to know where you live. We don't want to know any of that. There's a lot of privacy stuff that goes into library usage. For schools, it's the opposite. Teachers want to know what their students are reading. Parents want to know what their students are reading. And so we created Sora for our schools, our school services. And what it does is it lets teachers assign books to students. It lets parents see what the students are doing. It lets the parents, teachers, and the students see how long they've been reading, how long it takes them to read a specific book, how many minutes a day they've been reading, and all sorts of really cool stuff. And so schools really, really love it. In fact, just this morning, it was announced that it was one of Time Magazine's top apps of 2019.
I saw that. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're really excited. So in 2018, Libby won one of Time's top 10 apps of the year. And then
you guys got to build a new app for 2020.
I know, that's it. That's what we were joking. We're like, everyone always gets a little confused because we have multiple apps, but each one of them has won a Time Magazine award. So I think we should probably keep going with it. But yeah, so if you're an adult using a library, you're going to use Libby. And if you're a student that's currently at a school that's using OverDrive, that's going to be Sora. The cool thing with Sora is it actually integrates with libraries as well. So a student can use their student ID, and they can access their public library as well through it. So it's really cool. And it's kind of gamified as well. Like there's badges and all sorts of stuff for them to win. But yeah, they're both built on the same platform. So that if maybe you're a parent using Libby and you have a student using Sora, you're going to see a lot of similarities because they are, at the end of the day, an ebook and audiobook app.
Cool. So if I'm an independent author and I've put my books through to OverDrive and I want to let my readers know that they're available in libraries, is it probably easiest to promote, use the Libby app for searchability?
Yeah. So if you want to let libraries know, you would basically tell them that it's in the our OverDrive marketplace. That's where they go and do their purchasing. But if you want to let readers know that your book is available, let them know that you can download Libby and then you can find your books that way. If you're an author who's writing, middle grade or juvenile or YA stuff, and you want to promote it to schools, you can do that too. But Libby is by far our more popular of the two apps, just because Sora is very much, again, it's targeted for students only, and it has to be students that have access to the content through their school. Whereas Libby, you just go get a library card and you're all set. So, and actually, a lot of places will give you a library card through Libby using just your phone number, which is really cool.
Really?
Don't know if Toronto does that, but
it might be just an American feature, but
no. So it's called Instant Digital Card, and we've made it available to any of our libraries to add. And they're welcome to. I think we have like 30 or 40 large library systems that use it right now. But basically, what it does is it asks you for your cell phone number, and then it gives you a verification code, and then in the background, it basically looks at your cell phone number and confirms that your cell phone is in the service area of that library. And if it is, we give you a library card in like 15 seconds. The reason that libraries haven't 100% added this feature because it's free for them to add, is that it's actually so successful bringing new library users to them is they're worried about demand. Yeah, so it's a good problem to have. Like literally the people who use this service are adding hundreds of new library card users a month, which again, amazing, but they just want to make sure that they can meet the demand. So I'm not sure if Toronto does it, but I know that Cuyahoga does, Los Angeles Public, and a whole bunch of other places.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now we just need to fill the digital marketplace with books that can keep up with all of this demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, that's what's great about the indie authors and Kobo Writing Life is because you guys can set your own prices as authors, you can make your books a little bit more affordable than some of the, the big five. And a lot of times libraries will go in and they'll purchase independent author content because it's so much more affordable. And they know like, okay, even if say 15 people borrow this book as opposed to 100 people that might borrow something else, it's so much more affordable for them. And then that way that's one of the biggest things that you can use as a marketing tool for you as an independent author is you can control the price.
Yeah, we've definitely had Toronto Public Library kind of say that to us. We had an event with them where they were saying that they love indie because there's not as many like rules or restrictions about content. They can just go in and they know they're going to get the content for like the price that they want, and that they don't have to worry about kind of like repurchasing or anything like that. So I think it's a really, really good and timely opportunity for indies to sort of start taking over this market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, people may have noticed in the recent months, there's been a lot of press about a couple of different publishers changing their rights and changing their pricing and all sorts of stuff. And, that's something where it's troubling for libraries because they want to purchase that content from those places, but it's a huge opportunity for independent authors who don't have to be worried about what a publisher wants the price of your book to be. You can decide, what you want it to be, how available you want it to be for libraries, which is great.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing our authors like with kind of lots more sales that they don't even realize that are coming from library sales at all. So it's really it's always a fun story when we get to tell someone that, no, we're not actually overpaying you. These are just from library sales.
Yeah, it's like one of those things, that old like infomercial, like the set it and forget it kind of a thing. Like even if you don't do anything, your books are, if you put them in our service and you don't market yourself at all, they're still there and they can still be purchased, and it's just another place to make your content available. It's sort of like with podcasts. Like we put our podcast on Spotify and I don't even think about it, and then I'll look at the Spotify stats and be like, oh, people are listening to us there too. That's great. Like it's the more places you can put your book, the better.
Nice. And Joni just commented there that it looks like the Toronto Public Library does not yet have instant access available, but maybe that's something that they're working on soon. And then also hello to Tracy Devlin, who says hi. And just a reminder, if there's any questions, throw them in the comments as we will keep chatting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you excited to work on in 2020 for OverDrive, other than this new app that's going to win time awards?
Really, I got to get code. I have to learn how to code. So my favorite thing that I'm really excited about is, as I mentioned, going to book festivals. With Libby in the past, we've basically, with OverDrive and Libby both, we've really been relying on libraries to do promotion of their services. But, at the end of the day, we are one vendor of a library. A library might have 12 different things that they're offering, whether it's their DVDs and multilingual, learning a new language, and Libby and OverDrive is just one of them. So we started doing this consumer marketing, and I love getting to go out to book festivals and showing people the service and how easy it is and how instant, and seeing the things that kind of light up people's eyes, like stuff that we don't even think about. Like, for example, on Libby, one of the font, you can choose your own font, and one of them is a dyslexic font for people who have dyslexia. And I got to show that to multiple people this year at book festivals, and they told me like, oh my God, my son has dyslexia and he can't read a book. And like seeing in real time the son's eyes light up because they were able to access it, like that kind of stuff, like that, those little moments of magic are always amazing for me to see. But some other things that I really love about our service, and I'm excited to see in 2020, we're working with a number of different smart speakers and devices so that we can make our content even more accessible to readers. Right now, if you go into a car and you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto you can use Libby right in there. It's one of the apps that just pulls up on your screen, and so you don't have to worry about fiddling with your phone. The same thing is going to be true in the near future with Sonos system. Like, so if you have a Sonos speaker in your house, I happen to have a couple of them, like, sort of throughout our house. And so just the idea that I could listen to Libby, play an audiobook for me throughout my house, I just adore. That's really exciting for me.
Yeah, that's exciting that Kobo Writing Life authors will be able to have their audiobooks through into this system and just throughout all the readers' houses.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing just to know. Like, we were talking before about how, we both cook and we listen to audiobooks while we're doing it. Like, just the idea that I won't have to have headphones in, and like, that's such a cool thing to keep people connected. And just the idea of, like, as a writer, thinking about the idea, if you have an audiobook, of putting that on a speaker in a car instantly. So while someone's sitting through traffic, they're listening to your audiobook.
Yeah, I was saying that my apartment has never been as clean since I started listening to audiobooks, because I'm just like looking for something to do while I'm listening.
Yeah, it's such a nice, it's just such an easier way to get your reading done. It's something that before I worked here, I never listened to an audiobook, mainly because they weren't super accessible. You had to have like 12 CDs on you at all times. But now it's your phone. It's right there. And there's just a lot of things in the work that we're not allowed to talk about yet that is just going to, designed to make our service as easy as possible. Our main website, overdrive.com, is something that I kind of oversee what the content on there. And I'm excited we're hoping eventually to sort of create a community there where people can come and discuss things with each other and create book clubs and see book reviews. We have a whole team of librarians that work with us. So like getting library reviews, real time on our service, stuff like that I'm excited to see where it can go.
Cool. I'm excited to see all these new features. You guys have a busy year ahead.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question from Sky there that says, Draft to Digital seems to offer access to some OverDrive promotions. Will Kobo do the same? And the answer is yes. We have a kind of like a foot in the door with OverDrive. We keep calling them our sister company, but they are. And we definitely have opportunities to sort of like very specific promotions with them. I know that we did a great one, your summer reading promo, your online book club.
Yes. Yeah. So we have a couple different book clubs that we do. We have our summer reading one, which is usually for young adult and middle grade. We have our Big Library Read program, which is sort of a global ebook program where it's like one book and people can borrow it all around the world at the same time. And then we also have what we call Together We Read, which is a countrywide version of that. So I think a couple times a year we do a Canadian Together We Read where...
Yeah, we had a Kobo Writing Life author was featured in August, Julie Evelyn Joyce. Yeah, and it was great because she was able to go into the forum and interact with like readers and librarians and be like, this is my book, and have them read it. It was really awesome. And there was such easy social sharing, like images and graphics that were provided. It's really great.
Yeah, she came on our podcast. She and I got to talk about her book. And and that all started because, again, like she wrote a book and she kind of self-promoted around her community, and then it sort of just took off from there. And her book went from something that she independently published and put on Kobo Writing Life, and then all of Canada was reading it at the same time. And for a
and coincidentally, she also won the Kobo Emerging Writer Prize for romance.
Yeah,
it was so funny that she was picked for that as well. I was like, oh, that's terrific! Like, it was just great promotion for her book. Yeah. And then we'll have like lots of other promotional opportunities that you can email the team at writinglife@kobo.com if you're interested. So Tracy asked, besides signing up for OverDrive through our Kobo dashboard, is there anything else authors can do to help librarians find the books?
Yeah, so it is, like I said, I know it can be a little cumbersome to have to directly connect with people. So if you don't want to do that, a great way, again, is there are countless hashtag chats that go on Twitter all the time. When I was managing our social media here at OverDrive, I would get on various ones. If it was an educational one, it's like EdTech or EdChat. And there would be nightly or weekly library chats as well. So like just looking for specific hashtags, and you can Google like library hashtags on Twitter, and then pull those up on Twitter and see the conversations that are going on and just join those conversations. You don't have to relentlessly be like, this is my new book, hashtag LibChat. But if you join those conversations, a lot of times they'll basically, they'll kick off at like 8 o'clock Eastern time on a Tuesday, and you go in and you introduce yourself and you say, hi, I'm Adam Sockel. I'm an author. I wrote this book, put in a little link there, and then just join the conversation in a kind of a more passive way where you're just a part of the group. If you're just spamming people with your URL, that's not a great experience for them. But if you're joining the conversation and it's a conversation in your genre, or again, like especially with librarians, and librarians a lot of times will talk about specific genres of books. If you're going in there and you're having those conversations, they're going to recognize your name, and then you can, if they, ask them to follow you, and you can send them a direct message and say, hey, I didn't want to bring this up in the chat, but here's my book, and I would love it if it got put into libraries. It's something that you just sort of have to put the time in. Sorry. I was going to say, you spend time doing all the writing, spend a little bit more time, promoting yourself as well.
And I think just even, it sounds simple, but just like letting your readers know that books are available through a library, because like we said, it's just like such an easy one opt in that you kind of could maybe potentially forget to let readers know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have several friends who, in addition to being self-published through Kobo Writing Life, they also do, like, as they're writing their book, they'll do it on Wattpad. So they'll write like chapter at a time on Wattpad, and they'll get reader feedback, and then what they'll tell their readers is like, hey, if you're liking this book, I've written another one and it's available through the library, or it's available on Kobo Writing Life. Like, just reminding them exactly what you said. Hey, my book is in the library, or I'm looking to get my book added to the library. Would you mind recommending it? So it's just, it's just being kind of persistent.
Nice. So you've mentioned your podcast a little bit, The Professional Book Nerds.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, sort of like, how did you get started with that? Was it just that you were just talking about books so often, you're like, I should just put this into a broader world?
Yeah. So my co-host Jill, when she started, I think she's been here about 5 years now. She came up to me one day, and again, I was managing all of our social media at the time, and she's like, do we have a podcast? I said, we don't. And she's like, we should have a podcast. And it made sense because, again, if you were to walk around our office, and I'm sure it's the same at Kobo, you're going to hear book conversations more often than anything else. And so we realized we have this amazing kind of whole group of librarians, and even just like hundreds of nerds here in general. Even if they don't have a library background, they're big readers. I like to tell people I'm librarian adjacent. I've spent so much time with librarians, but I'm not an actual librarian myself. So we started doing an episode a week where we would do just book recommendations. We would bring in a couple of our coworkers and say, what have you been reading? And we would do some themes, mainly genre-based at first. And then I got the idea. I contacted one of our publishers and said, hey, I'd love to interview some of your authors. And they said, how about this person and this person? And Marika Niekamp ended up being the first person who came on the show. This Is Where It Ends is a YA book that she wrote. And then it got to the point where they saw that we have, first off, I could tell the publishers, like, hey, we're going to put this podcast in front of all of the purchasing librarians at, 44,000 libraries and schools. And then also we have millions of users around the world. And so we're going to put a link to this episode in our weekly newsletter. And those numbers got their attention. So before we knew it, and before I had any right to talk to anyone ridiculously famous, I was sitting down with like some of the biggest authors in the world and interviewing them and pretending like I knew what I was doing and faking it until I made it. And like I said, we do Mondays and Thursdays, and the author ones are easy at this point. It's just having a conversation with someone that I'm excited to talk to. The themed ones, Jill and I could be better at making up further in advance, because it's like a Wednesday morning and we're like, we need to offer up some book recommendations.
Yeah. So. Well, Tracy Devlin commented here that Adam loved your interview with Holly Black.
Oh, thank you. She was so amazing. That was one of those people where having a conversation with her, I could just, like, I felt out of, like, I was like, she's such a higher plane of a human than I am. But I call her the Queen of Fairies. And like, literally, she is like the queen of writing about elves and fairies. And so, that we were talking about Queen of Nothing. That just came out on Tuesday. And the episode was supposed to come out on Monday, but I was in Las Vegas, so it didn't come out till Wednesday. Sorry about that. But yeah, it was great. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Cool. And if there's any Kobo Writing Life authors that are interested in maybe being on your podcast, how could they do that?
Yeah, great question. So if you go to professionalbooknerds.com, we have a contact button there. And we actually have a big fancy form that you can fill out that you can tell us exactly who you are and what your book is about and where you heard about us. And it gets sent to our system, and that's where we see all of our requests. I will tell you, one of the things on there says, when would you like to be interviewed and when would you like the interview to come out? Whenever you're submitting anything for our podcast, I would recommend like 2 to 3 months in advance. Just because we're really lucky now where we do get lots of author requests. And so at any given time, we usually, mainly because Jill and I don't want to stress out, but we try to have like 4 or 5 weeks in advance already scheduled out and recorded from the author interview standpoint. So yeah, if you go to professionalbooknerds.com, or we're on Twitter and Instagram at ProBookNerds, we do a lot of stuff on there too. So if a lot of people will just relentlessly send us tweets, and then that's how they become friends with us, and then they can come on.
Well, perfect. Well, also speaking of your podcast, I was listening to you guys chat about Nano. How is your Nano going?
My Nano is not going as well as Jill's. She is killing it. I think she's at like 40,000 words, which is ludicrous. But I'm doing good. I'm using a piece that I've been working on for most of this year, which is apparently allowed now for Nano. You're allowed to use a work in progress. So I'm not going to hit the 50,000 words, but I have been writing every day, which is really the main thing I wanted to use Nano for.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone kind of paying attention to this right now or is one of the people who is able to write every day without like being told to. If you can, God bless you. I go in like spurts. Like I'll write 4,000 words in 2 hours and be like, I'm a superhero. And then I won't write again for like 2 weeks. So this has been helpful for me to set some time every morning to write, whether it's 200 words or 1,000 words or whatever it is. Again, Jill, she's killing it. She has her spreadsheet and she marks every day. Yeah, she's got her bullet journal, and like, if you want to listen to our podcast for advice on writing, listen to the times Jill speaks, not me, because I'm just like on a wing and a prayer throwing stuff onto a Word doc. But
yeah, Nano is great, but it's also a challenge. Yeah, we always have a group here that we do what we call Kobo Rimo. And I was meant to do it. I was meant to do it this year, but I backed out. Last year, I got like halfway through and then like just couldn't continue. But it's a real experiment for me to like, can I do an hour a day writing or something creative? So I think it's always fun to do. And we had 5 people complete it last year, and 1 person published their book on Kobo Writing Life within a month. So
within a month, that's amazing. See, I always tell people, if you're doing Nano, it's like running. I'm a runner, and it doesn't matter how much you do. If you're doing it, it's better than doing nothing. So
exactly.
That's the way I'm looking at Nano. Is I'm not going to hit that 50,000 words. I probably won't hit 40,000 words, and I might not hit 30,000 words. But at the end of this month, I'm going to add a certain amount of words to my work in progress, and it's more than I would have had I not done anything at all.
Yeah, nice. Leslie asked, do you guys need ARC books before an interview on your podcast?
We don't need them, but we love it if we can get a hold of one, and they can be digital or physical. That's more so because I like to pay respect to the people that I'm speaking with. I'm a big believer in, and I think it's one of the reasons that our podcast has done really well. I'm a big believer in, I'm so appreciative of when someone takes an hour to talk to me, that I want to make sure that they enjoy themselves as well. And so for me, that's doing as much research as I can. And a lot of that research is reading their book. So it's not necessary, but if you can provide one, I can usually get through them pretty quickly. I'm a little bit of an insomniac. So yeah, if you can, that's great. And if we're able to bring you on the podcast, we'll email back and forth with you and give you where you can, deliver that and all that jazz.
Oh, awesome. So as you do a lot of book recommendations, I wanted to know if there's one specific book that stands out in your mind that that works really well digitally and through an audiobook.
Okay. Wow. This is one book. Okay.
I really just sprung this on you as well. I should have maybe sent this question to you before.
No, that's okay. I can do this. So I will say, so as an audiobook and like an ebook, both ways.
Yeah. I'm curious about what's your favorite one that works in both formats?
Okay. I will say, I was talking about His Dark Materials earlier. The first 3 books of the His Dark Materials series. So the Golden Compass and the Amber Spyglass and the Subtle Knife. Those three are done. The audiobooks are done as a cast recording.
Oh,
So
wow.
there are Philip Pullman does the narration, but then every other character, Lyra, Pantalaimon, everyone else, there's like 100 different characters and they're people, and it sounds like you're listening to a stage play, and it's amazing. It is. There's music and everything in between. And then other than that, it's really just finding a narrator you love. Um, Neil Gaiman narrates all of his own books, which is they're so good. But I tend to look for, if I'm looking for an audiobook that I know I'm going to enjoy, and it's one that maybe I don't want to like, that maybe I'll focus in and out of every once in a while. Comedic memoirs are my go-to.
Oh, yeah.
So like Steve Martin or Billy Crystal. I'm like a 70-year-old Jewish man in my heart. So all of those old comedians are where I tend to go to. But Ali Wong just wrote one. I know Amy Poehler is, Tina Fey. Those are the really popular ones. But those are great. But yeah, the His Dark Materials books, especially now with the show that just came out, they are like, they blew me away.
Okay, I'm impressed. You had a very succinct answer there to a question I just threw on you.
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't know if that's succinct. I don't think anything I say is succinct, but and I will say, just because I honestly think it's the best standalone book I've ever read. The Starless Sea came out this month by Erin Morgenstern, who was also on our podcast, and she is a NaNoWriMo expert. Her first book, The Night Circus, the first draft of that was written in a Nano.
Oh, wow.
But The Starless Sea just came out this month, and I got to interview her in person, and like I fanboyed. The Starless Sea as a standalone book, I honestly think is the best book I've ever read. So I just like, I'm making it my mission to tell everyone in the world about that book in case they aren't aware.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to point out, so any Kobo Writing Life authors, if they're interested in opting their books into OverDrive, you can simply do it. It's in the rights and distribution section of your book. And we're going to have OverDrive distribution with audiobooks coming very, very soon. So Adam, thank you so much for your time. And where can our authors find out more information about you and OverDrive? Is there anywhere that we can direct them toward?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to find out about the company of OverDrive, just go to company.overdrive.com. That's where you'll get information, everything from how we help libraries, how we help schools, how we work with publishers, and everything in between. That's going to be the best place. If you want to find out stuff about me, if you just go on Twitter or Instagram and do @ProBookNerds, I do most of our social media. And there's links to my personal one in there if you want to see pictures of my dogs and the food that I cook. Because that's pretty much,
yeah, the food that's cooked while you're listening to audiobooks.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I will say one of my two dogs is one of the like 5% of dogs that can look at screens. And so I have lots of nerdy pictures of him looking at a screen and me saying that he's reading an ebook, which, so.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for everyone for joining and for the great questions too. And yeah, we'll see you guys all again soon.
All right. See you guys.
Okay. Bye. It never ends when I want it.